Gentlemen, because you guys submitted all of these hot takes. Let's just say these hot takes do not disappoint. One bit, they do not disappoint. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start off the mailbag with Michael. Michael, you submitted two. We're going to start off with your first one, and that is the Commanders come out victorious in the NFC East. And this isn't even really... So with the mailbag, it's not really all hot takes. It's just your takes in general. I'll clarify if they're hot takes or they're just takes. This one for me is just a take because I agree heavily. I like this one a lot. There's no really other... I mean, the Cowboys are your other big competition centerpiece in that division. The Eagles have been a little sketchy to start off the year. And I mean, they're dropping games. They're playing close to the Browns, who have been a little shaken up. Not the best competitor. I don't like the Eagles winning the division this year. Giants are not going to win the division this year. They're down in their slums. They're down on their luck. The Cowboys just got dismantled against the Lions at home. I feel the Commanders would play a lot closer to the Lions. I think the Commanders just match up to anyone in the league at this point. They can scheme for anyone. They're well coached by Dan Quinn. Jaden Daniels is developing and just translating a lot faster, a lot better than people expected. The Heisman winner's coming out. He's been proving himself, been putting on a show and making a statement why he was the second overall pick, why he is a stud, why he is. And I believe the Commanders will come out victorious in the NFC East as well. I agree with this take right here. I think Jaden Daniels is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL by far. I think the Commanders are a very bright future team. They're going to come out. They're going to put on a show year after year. They're going to be right in contention to win some Super Bowls. Believe it or not. Just for me, that starts off with the new stadium, but that's a whole different argument. The Commanders are going to come out. They're just going to keep playing these close games. They're going to keep giving these teams scares. And when they build up more team chemistry, they build up more time together as a unit. They're going to be scary to face heading down the stretch in December, in January. And hopefully for the Commanders organization in February, playing those February games in the Super Bowl. But I do agree here. I do think the Commanders will come out victorious in the NFC East. And your second hot take. This one's not, again, this one for me is also just a take. I really like these takes that you brought in today. BYU is a serious contender in the Big 12, and they look legit. I agree heavily. I think this Big 12 is very interesting this season. It's very good. There's talent spread around in the Big 12. Teams, BYU, just been putting on shows week after week. They're ranked all the way up, I think, in the AP poll 12, 11. Iowa State, who's also in that Big 12, ranked 9th, undefeated as well, 6-0. Both of these teams 6-0, top 12 rankings, right there in college football playoff contention. That's my Big 12 championship, Iowa State, BYU as of right now. There's other teams in the Big 12 that are also not bad. They need some respect on their name, such as maybe at Texas Tech, Kansas State. They've dropped a couple games, but they're still a respectable organization. Avery Johnson and all those guys. Deion Sanders and his folk there in Colorado. They've been playing way better than expected this season. I think they're coming out. They just look like a better unit, more put together than they were last year. And they look like a respectable opponent. I don't believe they're contenders in the Big 12, but they look like a respectable opponent week after week. Colorado, a lot of respect. But BYU, they've just been putting on a clinic. We mentioned Kansas State. BYU rolled through Kansas State. Another team in that Big 12, Arizona. BYU rolled through Arizona this past week. They've just been playing teams like it's no one's business. They've been coming out like a team that has nothing to lose, shot out of a cannon, playing great football, and it's really come out of nowhere. BYU's just really turned this ship around. They've gotten stuff done, and now they're sitting in a prime spot to take the conference, sitting in a prime spot to snag a college football playoff bid. I mean, a good playoff bid at that. We know the top four conference championship winners get a top 4 bid. It's very plausible. We look down the line in December, we see BYU sitting at a number 4 slot in the playoff, not playing in the first round, not playing in that quarterfinal matchup, not even quarterfinal matchup, not playing in that first round matchup, their first matchup being in the quarterfinal. And for Cougars fans, that's huge. You didn't expect that going. I mean, that was what you hoped. But in reality, you didn't expect that going into the season. You didn't expect to be sitting at 4 in a playoff spot at the end of the year. That would be huge for this organization, huge for recruitment, huge for everything. And I believe you're right. I believe they are a serious contender in the Big 12, and I believe they're a serious contender for the national championship. They've been playing good football with no one to stop them and really prove, hey, let's bring them down to earth a little bit. They've been living on the moon all season. I have no problem with seeing this team staying on the moon, establishing a colony throughout the season, hoisting a trophy at the end of the year. I mean, I'm on the BYU bandwagon right now, if you couldn't tell. I believe they are a serious contender in the Big 12, and I believe they are very, very legit. So I like this take, and I believe BYU is in a prime spot to do something magical at the end of this season. So the Cougars going to be an interesting team to watch down the line, but I believe you are right. And yes, I do agree they are a serious contender in the Big 12, and they are very, very legit. This next one, Cade Klubnik, a Heisman finalist. This is coming in from Tyson. Tyson, obviously known, big Clemson fan, big Clemson fan. Still a big believer in Deshaun Watson and all those boys down in Cleveland. But this is a different argument. Cade Klubnik winning the Heisman, not winning the Heisman, but becoming a Heisman finalist, being in New York at the end of the season, looking with aspirations to hoist that Heisman trophy. And for me, this is funny because the next statement is also a Heisman statement. But this is the first hot take for me, because I just don't, his resume is not fulfilled enough for him to be standing in New York at the end of the season. Not when you have guys like Cam Ward putting up video game numbers in Miami with Xavier Estrepo, Damian Martinez, and that whole unit. And then you look around to Boise State in the Mountain West. Ashton Jeanty's putting up the most unseen numbers since Melvin Gordon in 2013. And then you look around, you see Travis Hunter putting up great numbers on both sides of the ball, 2 interceptions, a couple receiving touchdowns to pair, and like 500-ish receiving yards to pair, just playing 96% of snaps all season. And then you look at Cade Klubnik in the ACC with Clemson, and the only thing you really see is, yeah, we battered App State, we battered NC State, we battered some other teams, Wake Forest, just teams that they're going into those games expected to batter. He's had a great season. I mean, passing touchdowns. He looks a lot more developed than he has in prior seasons, his third season as a starter. And this is the season for me. I can really look at him and say, yes, this guy is good. This guy is talented. This guy does play football at a high rate. I think he's much more improved than he has been in previous years. I think he's the most pro-ready he's been in his career, which makes sense because he's later on in his career. He's also the most matured. You can tell by his pocket awareness, his pocket presence. He knows where he is at all times. He's been keeping the football a lot more secure this season, a lot less careless turnovers. He looks like a more established quarterback, a more developed quarterback, and the best version of himself. But I'm still going to say I don't see a timeline. I don't see an alternate reality where Cade Klubnik at the end of the season is in New York. He's hoisting a trophy. He's even in contention to win that trophy. I believe it'll be a 2-man race between Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter, which segments into the next take from also Michael. I overlooked. You didn't just have 2. You had 3 takes in here today, and this is also your take. The Heisman is a 2-man race between Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. I agree 100%. I believe this is how it should be. You said no quarterback deserves to win this year. Or not no quarterback deserves to win, but no quarterback should win. I'll disagree with that part of the statement, but the overall statement, I agree. I disagree with the no quarterback should win. I feel the 3 are Ashton Jeanty, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward. I believe that is your New York trio. That's who you should be sending at the end of the season. They've just done too good of a job cementing their name at the start of the season, unless one of them falls off a cliff and just does not perform at all. Heading towards the end of the season, this last 6 stretch of games, that there's no argument to go against them. Ashton Jeanty, he hasn't even played a full 6 games. He's played 5 full games, 20 quarters, and he's still putting up the most unseen numbers since 2013 Melvin Gordon, who was snubbed of a Heisman because of Marcus Mariota, or some other big names barring that. I just believe those 3 have too much of a resume to be taken off that ballot. If you're going to take one off the ballot, it would be for a guy like Jalen Milroe, who just hasn't, in my eyes, had a season to where he should be taking the honor away from one of those guys. Losing to Vanderbilt sort of knocked off some credibility for me. Playing too close against South Carolina knocked off some credibility for me. For Cam Ward, being in position against an unranked Virginia Tech and Kyron Drones sort of knocked off a little bit of value for me. Having to come back from 25. Granted, you did it against Cal, but even getting in that position to begin with sort of knocks off some credibility for me. I believe these two guys that have just cemented themselves week after week and been the most efficient are Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. Those two guys should be in New York stamped. Their flights should be booked right now. Those two guys should be in New York no matter what at the end of the season, barring an injury, barring falling off a cliff again. Just, you never want to wish that. You never want to think that heading into a season, to a couple games, to anything. I believe those two guys have banked their spots in New York. I believe they're going to New York at this end of the season, and I believe it's one of those two hoisting the trophy. My opinion, I could talk all day about Ashton Jeanty, and I will. Frankly, I will. I'll take a minute to ramble about Ashton Jeanty. He is a generational talent. Everyone dubbed Caleb Williams a generational talent coming out of USC. I didn't really agree with a generational standpoint of that. I think CJ Stroud was on a similar level coming out of college. I think there's other guys that have been. Trevor Lawrence was on that level coming out of college, undoubtedly. Caleb Williams was not a generational talent. Ashton Jeanty is a generational talent. You see running backs every generation or so playing at that caliber. Melvin Gordon was that generation's generational talent. Ashton Jeanty is this generation's generational talent. I've seen comparisons to Derrick Henry. I don't love that comparison because Derrick Henry looked to run through the run. Ashton Jeanty looks to bounce off tackles and run away from tacklers. He doesn't want to run through people. He's more bouncing off of people and making stuff happen with his legs. Hurdle, being explosive, but he will run through someone if he has to. Don't get that mistaken. My comparison for him is Todd Gurley, a guy that can find holes, that can bounce off tacklers, that can get away. He's just Houdini when it comes to being in that backfield, getting away from tacklers, evading all of these things. Todd Gurley with healthy knees would have been what I think Ashton Jeanty is preparing to be at the next level. He's playing obviously Mountain West opponents, but when you get him against anybody in college football, we'll see it in the playoff. I believe Boise State, if not even being in the top 12 at the end of the year, is going to secure that G5 bid. You'll see it. Ashton Jeanty, just no matter who you face at him, he can get around him, bounce off the tackle, go over him, do all these things at such an efficient rate. We've never seen a running back come out and break off 50-yard touchdown runs consistently. He does it. It's sort of at the point you look at him and you expect him, if he doesn't break off a 50-yard touchdown run, are you okay? Is there an underlying thing I need to look for? Which is absurd. I mean, Ashton Jeanty's just doing stuff that should not be done. He's doing it efficiently at such a high rate as well. He's a bettor's best friend. When bettors look at that over on the yards line, they're like, Ashton Jeanty, you've done it every year. Every game this year. You're going to do it again. And he does it again consistently. He's a sports bettor's best friend. I mean, he's just, a lot of guys love him, myself included. He's my favorite player in the nation. Ashton Jeanty, he's not your typical running back prototype. He is special. You can have a little bit of Derrick Henry sprinkled. You can have a little bit of Todd Gurley sprinkled. He is the next best running back. He is the next best thing. He is one of the best running backs coming out of college, maybe of all time. We're not going to get into the Bo Jackson, Barry Sanders. We're not going to disrespect legends. We're not going to do all this. But we're going to give Ashton Jeanty flowers at the same time. This is one of the best running backs in my lifetime. This is one of the best running backs coming out of college. I got to live through Derrick Henry coming out of college. I got to live through Todd Gurley coming out of college. Those guys were insane. I believe Ashton Jeanty is on that level. He did it last year as well. No one was really paying attention at that as big of a rate, as national of a scale. This season we're getting a bigger, broader look at him. He's my favorite guy coming out of college, and I believe that he is the best back in the nation by far, the best back in however big he wants to be. Ashton Jeanty is a generational prospect, and he will be going very high in this draft. He'll be very sought after. I could see him landing at a team like Dallas, who needs help in the run game, a team like Cleveland. Nick Chubb been injury prone. Jerome Ford's been knocked out a few times. Ashton Jeanty, for me, is a generational talent, and he is my 2024 Heisman winner. 2024-25 Heisman winner. Love Ashton Jeanty, and I believe he will get it done at an efficient and at a high level like he has been in college. And this is going to be a very fun Heisman race nonetheless. So thank you for getting me on a little bit of a tangent there, Michael. But I believe Ashton Jeanty is the best player in college football, and he should win this Heisman Trophy undoubtedly up to this point. The next hot take, the second to last hot take. I'm not holding you guys much longer, I promise. The second to last hot take, the Vikings will fall off. This also comes from Tyson, same one that submitted the K. Klubnik Heisman take. And I agree with you. I don't think they'll fall off. I know where you're trying to come from with this. They'll slow down. They're not going to... Actually, I'm going to go off you said. I'm going to go off you said. You said fall off. So I'm going to believe you think that in the playoffs they're not going to make much noise. They're not going to be in the conference championship. They're not going to do all these things. I could see. I think they're going to slow down. I wouldn't use the word fall off. I think they're going to slow down. I think production's going to come back to earth a little bit. I think their heads are going to get a little too big at times. They're going to be brought back to reality by some of these teams they play. They're going to be slowed down in the way they're playing. Their confidence, everything is just going to sort of halter a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I think Sam Darnold, his production is not sustainable. I think what they're doing is not really sustainable. This defense, though, however, if this defense can just keep playing at the rate they're playing, I believe there might not be any signs of slowing down. A brake pedal might not be an option for this team. They might just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. Next thing you know, they're 12-0 by the week 13 mark, and it's like this team is just something special. But I don't believe we'll see that. I see Sam Darnold. He'll start to have some games where he's throwing 200 yards, a touchdown, an interception, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They're going to lose some close games. They're going to lose some questionable games. You're going to be calling in Kevin O'Connell's play calling is going to be called into question, some stuff like this. I think they'll finish around a 12-5, 13-4 record, and I believe they're going to lose in the NFC Conference Championship. I believe it'll still be an amazing season for morale, an amazing season, nothing these fans expected going into it. Again, you can hope, you never expect going into it in reality. I think they'll slow down a little bit. They'll be brought back to earth in a couple of close games, and it'll be ending up like maybe a Cardinals when they start off super hot, or a Steelers when they start off 11-0 and then they dropped one to the Commanders. I believe they'll be brought back to earth and they'll sort of slow down. By the time playoff comes, they'll be more aligned with certain teams, and we won't see them in New Orleans for the end of the season. We won't see them in the Super Bowl, but they will have nonetheless an amazing season, something to look so highly on toward heading into next season, and just overall something to be super proud of. So the Vikings, I think they'll slow down. I don't think they'll completely fall off, but I also don't believe they're going to win anything significant this season. But they will make a run to about the divisional round of the playoff for me, maybe the conference championship, and definitely an exciting season nonetheless with Sam Darnold at the helm, and just something you weren't expecting. And you set up a good blueprint for when J.J. McCarthy returns off injury, and it'll just be interesting next season for the Vikings. I think they'll slow down, and that's what I think the Vikings would do this offseason. Last hot take is coming from Elias. Elias, we've talked football going back to 4th grade. We are very familiar with these football talks. His hot take, this is interesting. He says this generation of quarterbacks, this generation now, coming up out of college, all these young guys now, are much worse than last generation. Now, I think this is interesting, and I'm going to agree to disagree here. Because for me, I don't think they're much worse. I think they're very different. They have different strengths, different weaknesses. Last generation, we see Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, all these crazy guys, Drew Brees. They specialized inside the pocket. They specialized getting the ball to. There's just so many insane names at receiver. I mean, there still is. But you see names like they were throwing to Randy Moss. They were throwing to whoever T.Y. Hilton. They were throwing to all these big names. Odell Beckham when he was young. They really didn't have to do much besides dish it to these guys, make insane throws. They were really known for standing in the pocket, taking hits, movement inside of the pocket, spreading the field, getting the ball down, breaking defenders down with their eyes, all these certain unique abilities. This next generation sort of just taking a different approach to playing the same position. They're sort of using their legs to make more plays. We see guys like Josh Allen hurdling, running over, trucking, Lamar Jackson, spin moves, juke, left to right, whatever it is. They just play games much differently. I wouldn't say they're much worse. They're just much more diverse. That rhymed. But I just think this next generation is all about mobility, spreading, extending plays, breaking down defense in unique ways that haven't been seen before. And part of the reason is because that this generation, the older generation, was so successful inside the pocket, so successful the way they played the game. Defenses are adapting. They're honing down on that, causing for a new wave of quarterback play to make up for the newer defenses adjusting to the older quarterback play, if that makes sense. It's sort of, they've seen that old play, they're adapting, they're spreading, they're stylizing for that. So this has to come out and make an adjustment to stylize for the defense, and it just causes different waves of play style, different ways of play calling, different ways of spreading the field, different ways of doing certain things, which all have the same end goal, which is scoring touchdowns, moving the ball at will, spreading the field as efficient as possible. I believe this new generation is just as good, if not better, talent skill-wise, just doing it in a different way, not seen before, and it's just uncharted, unfamiliar territory for fans, coaches, and even the players. So I believe this generation isn't necessarily much worse, they're just much different. That's my take on that. I think they're forced to adapt and play differently. I think they're forced to come out and look at it in a different lens, a different scope. They have a lot more different things to scheme for, prepare for. So I don't think they're much worse. I think if anything, they're a little better, honestly, in terms of play style and ability. I just believe they're much different, and they do things in a lot different style, a lot different fashion, if that makes sense. So that's not a bad take. I don't mind that take at all. I just have a different viewpoint when it comes to why they're different and why they play not the same brand of football. And I agree with you. It's not the same brand of football. It is much different because it has to be. They have to adapt. They have to make changes. And that's really just what I see from that point of view. And that's